Hello and welcome. Coming up, the minister responsible for keeping us safe, Brandon Lewis. A cheeky Nandies, anyone? We'll speak with the Labour leadership hopeful Lisa Nandy. Anushka Astana has all the technology for the best political health check around. How dangerous is that wedge between Northern Ireland and Great Britain? First Minister Arlene Foster will say. And checking the vital signs of all our guests, Labour's Lucy Powell and the Tories' Suella Braverman. Watcher. Now, he told the billionaires in Davos that he's a big believer in the environment, while also boasting of his support for oil and coal, which made as much sense as he normally makes. He complained that the Queen had rejected his suggestion that he could continue to carry out royal duties, but for free. Now, I can't imagine why Her Majesty would be anxious about his desire to earn big bucks in the private sector. What could possibly go wrong? As for our guest, Lisa Nandy, she got through to the final round of Labour's leadership election and said she'd never disrespect past Labour leaders, while accusing Tony Blair of being a Thatcherite and Ed Miliband of having dumb policies. Now, I really hope she never shows any respect to me. What do you think, Anushka?
I think there's no risk of that. Now, I want to start by talking to you about income and regional inequality after some interesting research from the Social Mobility Commission. It found that 77% of people, this large pink area here, think that there is a large gap between different social classes in this country. And despite a lot of chat from this and previous governments about addressing that, have a look at this. 52% of people, a majority, think the government is not doing enough to help the least well off, compared to 36% who either think they're doing the right amount or too much. And beyond that, I want to show you this regional divide because it is quite dramatic. This basically asks people whether they think there are good opportunities to progress in the places they lived compared to elsewhere in the country. The pink numbers are the people saying yes, and it is a whopping 78% in London, with 74% in the southeast, which is where Suella has a constituency. But then that really goes down in other parts of the country. So 54% in Scotland. It's not on here, but where Lucy is in the northwest, it's 48%, 37% in Wales, and just 31% in the northeast. Now, we know Boris Johnson has spoken a lot about this, and one eye-catching idea this week has been the idea of moving the House of Lords and all its peers up to York. Sounds great, but some fear it could go the way of Boris Johnson's Garden Bridge that cost a lot and was never delivered. In fact, the former Tory leader, William Hague, a Yorkshireman himself, is pretty sceptical, writing in The Telegraph, "While my Yorkshire-born heart says, get it all moved up there, my Yorkshire-bred common sense warns that this idea could easily be something between a flop and a fiasco if we're not careful." Robert.
Thanks so much, Anushka. Well, lots and lots to chew over with Labour's Lucy Powell, Tories' Suella Braverman. Lucy, I want to start with you. I mean, extraordinary research by the Social Mobility Foundation, which shows that in many parts of the UK, Midlands, North East, North West, astonishing numbers of people fear that they cannot better their lives where they are. This ought to be the most fertile territory for a progressive opposition party, and yet in those parts of the world, the Tories took tons of votes from you, and that's why Boris Johnson has got his majority. It really shows quite how dire Labour's performance really was.
Well, yeah, lots in that question. I mean, look, yeah, I think the deep-rooted inequalities in this country are some of the biggest challenges we face. It's a real burning injustice, not just regional, but also economic as well.
But why is it Labour persuading people who've lost hope in those parts of the country that it's the Labour Party that can give them hope?
Well, the first thing I'd say is let's not sort of tarnish the whole of the kind of North in that way, because the North, you know, we're very proud people. We're extremely proud, and we love where we come from, and we want to stay there. I think, you know, there's many issues within that. Firstly, Labour Party has been the political establishment in many parts of the country that you're talking about. People have voted Labour all their lives and still things haven't got better for them. So I think we sort of bore the brunt of that too. Of course, the Brexit issue as well, and how that played out in many of the places that you're talking about. And, you know, frankly, we didn't have a credible enough and a good enough offer. We didn't show that we were the party that could really challenge some of these inequalities. And the north-south divide in this country economically and in terms of infrastructure and opportunity and investment is one of the big challenges, and it has been for a long time.
Well, we'll come back to why Labour wasn't. But we'll come back to why Labour wasn't credible in meeting those challenges. But Suella, we've got a Prime Minister who has said that he feels that people in the Midlands and the North who previously voted Labour have lent the Tory party their votes, and he now wants to persuade them that he's on their side. Now, we know that there's going to be a lot more investment in infrastructure. The biggest infrastructure project on the table, we discovered last week, the HS2 high-speed link, is going to cost £106 billion. Is that the best use of £106 billion if you really want to regenerate this country?
Well, first of all, I would just say about these statistics and what Lucy was saying, that whilst people might be feeling, as Anushka was saying and setting out, the actual facts show that throughout the country since 2010, income inequality has drastically fallen, wages are rising, unemployment is at a record low.
No, hang on. So that's not right. The gap in incomes between the North and the South is wider than in any other part of the UK. We're not talking about income inequality, you know, in an aggregate sense. We are talking about the inequalities between different parts of the country. And all the statistics show that the UK has a desperate problem of inequality between regions.
Well, if we look at the employment figures out just this week, we saw that employment rose throughout the country, but especially in those parts of the country. So I don't think the statistics and the facts actually reflect some of the way people feel and definitely how Labour has responded
So
to
those
this
statistics
issue.
which show that people in those parts of the country are desperately despondent, those people are just wrong, are they?
What I am saying is that the facts on the ground suggest that because of the Conservatives' governance over the last 10 years, we've actually produced a lot of benefits for people economically, tax cuts, wage rises, more jobs. That's what helps social mobility wherever you live in the country.
OK, well, the message is plainly not getting through, but you didn't answer the question about whether HS2 should go ahead.
Right. So on HS2, well, the government, I mean, the costs have obviously spiralled and gone beyond what everybody expected initially. I think it's right for the government to be reviewing it and questioning whether it still is value for money. If the government considers that it isn't, then, as many MPs have suggested, maybe it is right to divert that money to other regional transport.
What do you think?
Personally, you know, I have voted in favour of HS2 so far because I do generally support the principle of increasing.
But it was 30 billion at the start, it is 106 billion now.
Yeah, so when the facts change, you change your decision, and I will consider the facts and the outcomes of any reviews that the government undertakes.
Sounds like you're quite close to changing your mind on it, but...
Not necessarily.
This is a big test for the Tories, HS2.
It's a very big test. But I'm delighted I've got Brandon Lewis with me, the Security Minister. Now, it's a sort of element of security is keeping us healthy. There's this desperately worrying outbreak of this new virus in Wuhan in China, which the World Health Authority is actually examining at the moment in terms of what global measures should be taken. How worried is this government that we could have an outbreak here of what appears to be a very serious, as I say, the coronavirus, life-threatening new virus?
Yes, look, we are in contact and liaising with our partners around the world and the World Health Organization. So we believe we are very low risk here in the United Kingdom.
Why is that?
Well, because what we're doing at the moment, and actually just this evening, the Foreign Office have just issued some updated guidance, and we're recommending that people only travel to Wuhan if it is essential. Anything but other than essential travel, people shouldn't do. And anybody going to China should just keep an eye on the Foreign Office's travel advice and just be cautious and wary about what they're doing and just be alert to what they're doing. But for Wuhan, we are saying nothing but essential travel. And what we're doing here in the UK is, first of all, the NHS itself is well prepared for these situations. We're in contact with the World Health Organisation. We will continue to make sure we're in contact with them. But also, if people are coming to the UK from those regions, we're putting measures in place at the airport, some screening for people who are coming from those regions, just to ensure safety. But as I say, because there has now been...
I've seen that the government is saying that if you're flying from Wuhan, there will be checks at the airport, check whether you've got flu-like symptoms. But one of the things that I understand is true of this virus is it can take quite a long time for the symptoms to emerge. So you might have it, but have no symptoms whatsoever.
Well, so I'm not an expert on the health side of this, but as I say, the government in the health department are in contact with the World Health Organization, making sure we're working with them and our partners, following actually the position the Chinese authorities have taken as well around saying nothing but essential travel to Wuhan. Particularly now this has been seen to have person-to-person contact. So we have got to be cautious about it, but at the moment we believe that the UK is very low risk.
Now, something which is right in the middle of your patch is this question about whether Huawei, the huge Chinese telecoms company, should be supplying equipment to UK telecoms companies for the rollout of 5G services. Now, my sources, the security services, tell me that GCHQ and the National Cyber Security Centre are confident that they can protect the UK from any risk if that equipment is used. So surely the decision should be taken for the rollout to go ahead.
Well, I'd say two things, Robert. First of all, I have your confidence in our security services on all matters. They do phenomenal work. So one of the things in my job, I'm humbled as well as being fortunate to see the amazing work that they do day in, day out to keep us safe. And they do that. But on the very specific question of the position around Huawei, I'm afraid that's going to be a matter for discussion at the National Security Council. When it comes to the National Security Council,
Tuesday, as I understand it.
Well, when it comes to the National Security Council, myself and other members of that council will have that discussion. We will take into account all of the advice that we get from the experts and our advisors and the services, and then we will make a decision.
But you're not saying that what I've been told is wrong, are you?
I'm not commenting on it at all, because I've not yet sat in the National Security Council, seen the advice from the services. I've not seen that advice yet. When we're in the National Security Council, when we have those discussions, we will take that advice on board in making a decision.
One of the things you will be acutely aware of is that there is already a lot of Huawei equipment being used by BT and Vodafone. Now, one of the costs of not using the Huawei equipment is it would mean that something that Boris Johnson has promised us, which is rapid rollout of broadband and rapid rollout of 5G, wouldn't happen. It'd be set back 2 years for 5G, 4 years for broadband. That would be a huge cost to the UK if we don't go with Huawei, wouldn't it?
Well, look, first of all, we are determined to do that rollout of broadband. The Prime Minister is determined. I was speaking with the Culture Secretary and actually the Home Secretary just yesterday about this very project. We want to see this to roll out. It's good for prosperity. But
BT will have told you what they've told me, that it will be set back years if they are not allowed to use what is, as I say, first of all, it's compatible with the equipment they've got, but also the interesting thing about this Huawei stuff, I mean, obviously there are security questions, but every technical expert says it is the best equipment in the world.
Well, I will be interested to look at what BT say. That's part of the information, the facts we will look at. But like my colleagues around the National Security Council table, we will all be looking at the facts and the evidence and the advice we are given by the services, by the experts, when we form a government decision. But I'm afraid you're not going to tempt me into going any further than that tonight, Robert.
Well, but America did send some people over last week to lobby the government on this. They say it's a security risk. There are some who believe that what America is actually arguing is not a security case. They just don't want the Chinese to become, in a business sense, any stronger. It's economic warfare. It's not about security.
Well, look, I can't speak for other people's opinions. What I can say is the government's position will be a decision we come to at the Security Council, and the Prime Minister chairs the National Security Council, looking at the evidence, looking at the facts, looking at the advice from the services around the table, and that's what will form our decision. And we will make a decision that is in the best interest, as we see it, of the United Kingdom.
Now, on a sort of related issue to do with cyber security, extraordinary story about the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, having his mobile phone hacked via WhatsApp, allegedly by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS. It sort of shows that none of us can be confident that our security is safe, doesn't it? If the world's richest man's phone can be hacked,
Well, it is a very stark reminder that we all have to be very conscious about our own security, how we deal with our houses, how we interact online in terms of keeping ourselves safe and being acutely aware of what we're doing and how we deal with it. But as I say, again, you know, we have agencies here in the United Kingdom, the National Security Council, and work through this as well. The National Cyber Security Centre gives advice to corporations and businesses on how to deal with these issues, doing phenomenal work actually, engaging with the private sector. But we all have a part to play, and it's when somebody as technologically advanced as we all would see somebody like that being, is in that situation. It's a reminder to all of us to just be very aware of what we are doing around our own safety and security, and a strong reminder of some of the risks there as we move into the world of encryption and end-to-end encryption and the ability to keep people safe and keep the online environment a safe place to interact.
Look, we're always out of time, but I do just want to ask you one final question. We're out of the EU at the end of January, but we've got to put in place, along with a trade relationship, a new security relationship with the EU. What do you want to see from that security relationship with the EU?
We're really ambitious. We want to see a really strong relationship. Crime now is across borders, not just within our country, but globally as well. Cyber's a very good example of that. I'll be talking to my counterparts from around Europe at the Justice and Home Affairs Council in Croatia over the next couple of days around the work we want to do to ensure that our agencies, our police forces are able to interact, work together to keep people across Europe and here in the UK safe. And I think that is achievable.
But, I mean, the data issues, the arrest warrant issues, these are complex. Is it really realistic all of this can be done in just a matter of a few months?
Yes, it is. We're known partners to each other. There are, for example, when you look at the security relationships, people often look at things like Europol. Well, the United States has a relationship with Europol, has a very, very large, arguably the largest contingent of people at Europol. So there are ways of making these things work. We're very ambitious for that. I hope our colleagues across Europe are. I think it's in all our interests to work together to combat crime that these days knows no borders.
Brandon, as always, lovely to see you. Thank you very much for coming over. And just a couple of words from Anushka, please.
Thank you. Well, all eyes are on the Labour leadership race. And since Robert is about to speak to Lisa Nandy, I wanted to show you some interesting polling from YouGov. They asked Labour members what factors are important to them when it comes to the next leader. So, look, here we go. The list of factors are here on the left, and the green bar indicates the number of people who think each of them is fairly important, while the purple bar not so important. So, for example, if we just look at the very bottom, members definitely not that bothered about having a Brexit here. Only 13% think that is important. The purple bar much, much bigger, and not many of them would like to see someone who is anti-Corbyn either. Now, Lisa is a northern woman and an ethnic minority. Some might say, great, Labour's never had a woman leader, and after the last election, it clearly has some work to do in the North and the Midlands. But those features may not get you that far with this membership, because interestingly, if we look at how many think it's fairly important to have a northerner, only 23% against 74% who think it's not that important. For BME, that goes up to 26%, and even on gender, only 38% think that that is very important. It ticks up for whether the person is a Remainer or working class, but let's have a look at the top three. At the top, 83% think it's important to have the support of a trade union. So Lisa's support from GMB clearly will be a positive thing, although, of course, the other two big unions going in a different direction. Number two, they want someone who is patriotic, 50% saying that is fairly important. And number three, they want loyalty to Corbyn, 44%. Now, what members often talk about not wanting are Blairites, and Lisa certainly isn't that. Asked about inflation policy, I'm going to get that right, this morning, she said that the consensus that Thatcher built lasted all the way through the new Labour years, leading to a response from this man. Let me show you what he said. Like any government, we had faults, failures, and did things people disagreed with. But don't tell me or those who work with me that we did nothing for the poorest in our country or the world. Robert.
Anushka, well, I'm delighted to be joined by Lisa Nandy. Congratulations, you're through to the final round of this rather long contest. I hope you've got the stamina for it.
It's only been going a week.
Well, it's going all the way to a couple of months yet, I think. Now, all the polling shows that your current leader, Jeremy Corbyn, was a massive negative on the doorstep. Your colleagues don't exactly hold back when I talk to them about how difficult it was to sell Jeremy Corbyn on the doorstep. But you've been saying that you think he was a great leader. Why on earth are you saying that?
Well, because, you know, if you think about what's just happened here, we've had the response from Tony Blair to something that I didn't say this morning, and then you telling me that I think I've been saying that Jeremy Corbyn's a great leader. I think we have to be
What did you say then? Go on.
I think we have to be honest with ourselves about where we've been and what we've been doing, and most of all about where we're going as a party. And it is perfectly possible, surely, to acknowledge that the last Labour government did some amazing, game-changing things for this country, including the minimum wage, investment in schools and hospitals, action on climate change, and also to believe that we weren't radical enough on the economy, that just taking from the richest and handing some money with conditions to the poorest just wasn't sufficient and didn't go far enough. And also to believe that Jeremy Corbyn did something very important for the party in 2015 when he helped us to move on from an era of austerity and say that we need to invest in public services and in people in this country again. And also to acknowledge that we got it wrong on a lot of things, including anti-Semitism, and that the public just didn't trust us in the end to deliver that radical change. We've got to get away from these false binaries. We can be the party of both, and we can have an honest conversation about our past. And most of all, could we just please start talking about the future? That's what the members want to see, and that's what the country wants to see as well.
But you are billing yourself as the candidate who speaks the truth.
I think that was Jess's slogan, actually, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, but I'm not sure you would wish. I'm not sure you'd wish to have a different slogan, or at least certainly not the opposite. And I suppose, look, the point is this: there are lots of people who just really want to know in the round, you know, was he a good leader or was he a bad leader?
I know, but these questions are just, you know, rate Jeremy Corbyn out of 10.
No, I'm not asking you that. But you did. I mean, look, you chaired Owen Smith's leadership campaign. You were, many people thought, the ringleader of the coup against Jeremy Corbyn. It's impossible, surely, for you to claim that he was a good leader.
No, but it's possible to acknowledge that Jeremy Corbyn moved the Labour Party forwards in terms of economic radicalism, in terms of particularly being proud about our values and wearing those on our sleeves, about going out and arguing the case for a more compassionate society, particularly when it's hard in relation to refugees and asylum seekers. It's possible to believe all of that, and also to believe that we tried to do too many things, that we underestimated the need that people have for security, for economic security, and to acknowledge too that we just didn't go out and make the case and win the argument about many things, including Brexit, where we ended up in a position where Leavers thought we were Remainers and Remainers thought that we were Leavers. And to say then that we've got to up our game and we've got to get out to the country, we've got to emotionally reconnect with those voters that we've lost. And most of all, that we've got to have a story to tell about the future. I don't think any of these things are mutually exclusive. And in fact, the reason that I left Jeremy's shadow cabinet in 2016 was because the only way that you can do that is to be a broad party, a united party, not a uniform party, a party that is prepared to challenge one another, but then go out and make that case to the country. And I had got fed up of the infighting, not just going on from one faction on the backbenches, but also a faction around the leadership too. Divided parties don't win elections, and I think there is an appetite now from the members and from the public to see Labour pulling together in the same direction and moving forwards.
But look, I want to talk about the future, and after a short break, that's what we'll do. But I just want to have one more question on the past. I mean, you have said, which, you know, these days, post the crash of 2008, is not exactly an uncontroversial statement, that you think more should have been done to tax the rich and give to people who are less well off. But circumstances, particularly political circumstances, were very different when Tony Blair became leader. And most people would say the thing that destroyed his reputation was going to war in Iraq. And if it hadn't been for that, people would remember him completely unambiguously as a hero for the Labour Party, because after all, he has been the most successful leader in Labour's history. So surely there are lessons. You know, even if for many people Blair is a dirty word, there must be things you can learn from Tony Blair.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this morning I said that I'm not going to get into trashing the last Labour government. There were, you know, as well as the minimum wage, there were things like the education maintenance allowance that were completely groundbreaking in my constituency and broke a settlement that had meant that young people got good GCSEs and couldn't go through college and go on to university. These were huge, major achievements. But I think this incessant focus on personalities, Tony Blair versus Jeremy Corbyn, ignores the fact that we only win when we're a broad team. Tony Blair didn't win 3 elections. Tony Blair was the leader of a broad team that stretched all the way from people like Claire Short and Robin Cook to Derry Irvine and Tessa Jowell. And that's what takes us into power. Those teams are the sort of teams that I've built all my life in order to achieve change, and that's what I think we need to do next. We need a different sort of leadership and a different sort of leader.
Lisa, lots more to talk about with you, particularly the future of the Labour Party. Don't go away, because I'll be talking to Lisa Nandy and, indeed, the First Minister in Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, after the break.
Hello, welcome to the Twitter break. This is my Challenge Annika moment, because I'm going to run up these stairs and introduce you to the important people in the gallery. Right, follow me up here. Here we go. OK, so I think I'm going to walk into lighting, which is here. Here. Am I coming in the right place? Here we go. This is lighting. Here's Jerry. Jerry's sorting all the lighting out. Jack and John here, EVS operators. And we are now going to go through to the main gallery. Oh. We're going to try and not hurt anyone in the way. This is where the action happens. You think it's me and Robert, forget that. These are the people that matter to you. Everyone wave. Hi. So let me show you some particularly important people. This is Cass, who basically tells me what to do. This is Kate Ford, who basically looks after me all the time. This is Tamia, who's one of the most important people here, because without her, the auto cue doesn't happen, and I don't know what to say. And now you've got to come and meet. You've got to come and meet the man himself, who's talking in my ear, but you can't hear him. Hello, hello, hello. This is Erin.
Hello. Oh,
Erin.
This way.
I don't know, you're the director.
Yes, I am the director. Hello. Twitter.
So tell us how the magic works.
Well, Lawrence is the vision mixer. He makes all the magic, really. I just sort of shout things out loud. But essentially, he cuts all of our cameras. So this is the vision mixing desk, Steve.
Looks very complicated.
Lawrence, do you want to explain some buttons?
It's fairly simple, though, that you've got all our cameras here, and we've got some graphic sources, and we've got some VT sources. And if we've got the guest outside the building, they'll be on what's called an outside source.
Yeah,
we have
sounds
got
easy.
An outside source tonight. We've got Arlene Foster on OS1 in
DP
Belfast.
leader?
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
We're just waiting for her.
But we've got Screeny's graphics as well, haven't we? So we can put Screeny on any screen. There's Screeny.
There's
That's on
Screeny.
Freely.
There's our baby.
That's, yes. That's what we're about to go to next, and then the screen next to it is what we
on the
see at
outlook,
home.
which is-
Who's that?
Oh,
That's
wow.
Alan, the
Look at
production
that.
manager's
Hey!
Yeah.
Alan is probably the biggest hero here at Peston.
Yes. Well, we better get back on air.
Yeah, go on then, Erin.
Yeah,
What's the
all
rule?
right.
Where am I going from
Well,
here?
you walk back down to the studio.
All right.
And then we'll come back on air in a second.
All right, I'm going to go back down and I'm going to try not to trip up because I'm in massive stilettos.
Hold it there on set.
Now, I'm delighted that Lisa Nandy is still with me. She's begged me to ask her more questions about Tony Blair and Jeremy Corbyn, but actually I'm going to disappoint you. Instead, I'm going to ask you a question about the American president, Donald Trump. Now, the current leader, Jeremy Corbyn, I did mention his name, sorry, but he refused to have dinner at the palace with Trump. Will you engage, if you're leader, in those sorts of gestures?
Well, if you don't mind me saying, you have now been asking me questions about men for a very long time.
OK, but he is the American president, the most powerful man in the world. His relationship with the UK matters.
Yep.
You know, what kind of relationship do you want to have with Trump?
Well, of course you engage. You know, one of the things that we've really got to get right in the Labour Party is that if we want to create a radically different society and make the deep, meaningful change this country wants, then we have to go out and we have to win those arguments. And if we want to create a more ethical foreign policy, then we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to take on the argument with people like Donald Trump. One of the things I said last week...
Just to be clear, as a proper lefty, from your point of view, you could go to the palace and sit down over a dinner with Trump.
You should go to the palace and you should have the argument with Donald Trump. One of the first things we should be saying to him is that we as the UK, would not sign agreements, trade agreements, with countries that didn't sign the Paris Agreement, and that we're going to use the leverage we have as a country in order to raise up standards on climate change around the world. That's the sort of conversation that we ought to be having with Donald Trump, not going to see him, as Boris Johnson and Theresa May have been doing, to beg for a trade deal on any terms, to support what he does right around the world, regardless of the consequences, in order to have some kind of relationship with him. We should be going there and making the case that this country can do better, that the world can do better, and that we want to see America do better.
Now, you want to take Labour beyond Brexit. The Prime Minister thinks he has won all the arguments on Brexit in the last general election. And so, for example, he doesn't want the UK to follow any EU rules, which means even if he gets his deal by the end of the year, it'll be a pretty basic trade deal. Most people would see that as a pretty hard Brexit.
Yeah.
Are you just going to, if you were leader, are you just going to let him do what he wants in that sense? Or are you, in fact, going to continue to make the case for a closer relationship with the EU than he wants?
Yeah, I think he's making a huge mistake. First of all, because the referendum showed a very divided nation, and so he's got to take the country with him, and particularly in Scotland, where a lot of people voted to remain, he's got to take that nation with him if he wants to protect the United Kingdom. So he needs to go out and make the argument, and he needs to listen to people and show a bit of humility.
But in that sense, you won't be able to take Labour beyond Brexit, will you? You'll all still be bogged down in these interminable arguments.
I don't think that's right, actually. We know we're leaving the European Union, but the question for Labour now is, do we spend all of our time on the back foot trying to defend some of those rights and protections that are now at risk from a trade deal with the US? Or do we get on the front foot and say, what sort of country do we want to be? And how are we going to protect people in this country through the next period? I think the answer is skills, actually. If you want to remain competitive and you want to protect labour rights, the best way to do that is to invest in the skills of people in this country. And Labour has never been the party of the status quo. We always need to be advancing and thinking about the future. And that's what I want to see us do now, to pull together and set out an alternative vision for the future of Britain.
Now, I'm almost out of time. A couple of very quick questions. If the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, finds that Labour is institutionally anti-Semitic, do you think everybody on the ruling NEC should quit?
Well, I think we should pull together as a party and sort this out, if I'm honest. And I don't think that walking away from the Labour Party at a moment where we would have been
roll, shouldn't they? In those
well, certainly the EHRC will report and they will tell us what they think we need to do. And I think we should implement those recommendations in full without hesitation. But I don't want to preempt that inquiry. There's a reason why this has been put into independent hands, and that is because it was suspected that there was political interference in the process. It is not appropriate for the next leader of the Labour Party to interfere in that process. My job as leader is to implement those recommendations in full when we get them.
Now, I'm almost completely out of time. This is a yes or no question. HS2 is now £106 billion. Would that money be better spent on other projects? Should it be scrapped?
Yes and no.
Oh, God, no!
It shouldn't be scrapped. The Prime Minister should get on with it, but he should make sure and make clear commitments to the North that it will go beyond Birmingham, and he should also get on with sorting out the chaos on our railways in other parts of the country, including the north of England, and investing in our bus network. That's what people want to see.
So I just want to bring in Lucy. You've not yet said who you're going to support. So having heard Lisa now, you're going to back Lisa?
Well, I've not said on purpose because with a group of other people from right across the political spectrum within the Labour Party, we're looking at some of the deep lessons from this election and the last four, and we want that to be there on the table for whoever becomes the new leader.
When does that report?
With some recommendations. Well, it won't be interfering in the leadership race, but hopefully it'll be on the table for when Lisa or whoever become the leader.
But does that mean you're not going to back anybody? Is that what you're saying?
Probably not. I mean, I think one of my regrets about this actually is that we've gone straight headlong into this leadership race. Lisa's got some really good analysis of what went wrong and what we need to do going forward. But I think if we'd come together collectively as a party and reconcile some of those issues, because they are tough issues for us as a party. If we
But is there anything that Lisa's just said that you would disagree with?
No, not very much.
Not trying to cause trouble.
No, I just want to know if she's backing.
We're not
We
here
went to school
disagree with.
together.
Yeah, we did go to the same school.
Oh, well, there's no chance of you supporting her then, is it? I'm afraid these school enmities...
But I think, look, the challenge for us going forward, is twofold. One is that we need to turn some of that... And what has been good about this contest so far is that people haven't been trying to take chunks off each other. Lisa, Keir, Becky and Emily have all been conducting this in that spirit. Yeah.
Suella, can I just ask you, are you slightly surprised that Keir Starmer, the only male candidate, looks as though he may well end up winning this contest?
On policy terms, I am, because Keir Starmer, particularly to those northern voters who Labour really need to regain, is the arch Remainer and the architect of Labour's failed Brexit policy. So I find it crazy that they're actually kind of rerunning that wheel, if you like, with Keir Starmer. But in terms
to
of
be fair to him, I mean, he said we need to move on from that now, and with Brexit's kind of done.
But actually, on the particular point, you've had now two women leaders, two Tory women prime ministers. Isn't it slightly odd that Labour... Do you think it's odd that Labour may well end up having yet another male candidate?
Well,
do you care about...
I'm a Conservative because I believe in aspiration and equality of opportunity and meritocracy. And I do actually believe that the Labour Party talks that game, but they don't actually deliver it. Whereas Conservative values and our Conservative Party is really able to personify those values. Our two female prime ministers, no female leader of the Labour Party. We've got the most diverse cabinet in history, Chancellor of the Exchequer of Muslim heritage, Home Secretary of Asian origin, great...
and an old Etonian as Prime Minister.
Lucy, I just want to very briefly go back to Lisa. Obviously, I know you've said a lot of use your term, respectful things about Keir Starmer, but, I mean, it would be astonishing, wouldn't it? Keir Starmer could have been leader of the Labour Party at any point in its history. It would be extraordinary if yet another white middle-class man became leader.
No, it's true that we've got to walk the walk on equality, but we've got to get the right candidate for the job, and we've got to raise the bar on ideas, and we've got to prove that we are looking to the future and that we've got a vision for the future of this country. And every person in this contest is doing that at the moment. I have to say to Suella, though, I'd rather have a feminist as a leader than the two women leaders that your party...
All right, I think this conversation can go on during the ad break. Don't go away, because in just a couple of minutes I will be talking with the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, about whether Boris Johnson has put a border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain in the Irish Sea.
Hello, welcome to The Break, #Peston. I am joined by Lucy Powell and Suella Braverman, and we're going to be looking at the Labour leadership race. And I love one where you have to walk around. On this one, you have to walk around, and the theme is Stand By Me.
Where's Emily?
So you can... Good point. Where is Emily? we picked the 3 front runners in the race, according to the polls.
OK.
So if you want to stand by Emily, you can stand over there, OK? I'm putting Emily over there. Right, here we go. So, who is most likely to beat the Conservatives? Come on, Sally, you've got to move.
I'm not going to tell you that.
You've got to have a go. Who are you most scared of?
I am very impressed by Lisa Nandy.
OK, you've got to stand by her. There you go. So Suella's choosing Lisa.
This might be the death knell for her campaign, though.
Is this a no walk?
Yeah, this is a no walk. I mean, look, I think the job of being leader of the opposition and Labour leader, you can't actually tell until someone's really doing the job. But I think, you know, they bring different skills.
Did you think that
to bear.
when Ed Miliband became leader? That things were on you that you hadn't expected?
Yeah, exactly.
OK, well, let's see if you can answer any of these.
Okay.
Come on. Best person to watch Love Island with?
Oh, well, that's easy.
All right, go on then.
That's Lisa.
Do the walk. What about you, Suella?
That's Lisa.
I think Rebecca would be quite good fun to watch.
You
So I
move
stand
over?
here.
Yeah?
Right.
All right, there we go.
Becky would as well.
What, are you watching Love Island?
I am, yeah.
No.
Ovs.
No? What, is this a good series?
I started getting to it. I came to it a bit slowly. I was trying
Who did
to
you watch
resist.
it with?
Just watched it on my own.
Oh, sorry. So, most likely to unite the Labour Party?
I think that's probably where Keir's strength would come in.
All right. Do the walk. What about you, Suella?
I agree, actually. I think
Why is that?
I mean, I think Lisa could do, and Becky. I don't know. We'll see how they're. See how.
Do you think he's
things
a bit
go.
more in the middle?
Yeah, maybe.
OK. Here we go. Who'd be best at PMQs?
Ooh, I really don't know about that.
Did you used to do PMQs?
I think it's
prep?
hard. I mean, we've seen Becky do PMQs already. She did that perfectly well. We've seen a lot of Keir at the dispatch box. Obviously, Lisa, we haven't seen at the dispatch box for a while, but she's a good speaker.
You're sitting on the fence. So, Ella, you take your position quickly.
no one's going to beat Boris at PMQs.
No one's going to beat Boris. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Welcome back. Now, I'm absolutely delighted that Arlene Foster, the First Minister of Northern Ireland, is joining me. Arlene, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Now, I want to start with the world's favourite subject. I'm being slightly sarcastic there, which is Brexit. You really should have done a deal with Theresa May over Brexit, shouldn't you? Because, you know, Boris Johnson has forced on you effectively a border in the Irish Sea.
Well, good evening, Robert. It's good to be with you from Belfast. Well, that's really akin to saying, would you like a broken arm or a broken leg? Because both deals, of course, were bad for Northern Ireland, and we're now having to deal with the issues around Boris's deal and Boris's withdrawal agreement. And, of course, those are very clear issues, and the Northern Ireland Assembly sent a very clear message around that earlier this week.
But surely, in the end, if you've got to choose between broken bones, the Theresa May, breakage was less damaging to you and Northern Ireland, in your view, than Boris Johnson's.
No, I don't think so, because, of course, it would have left us in perpetuity in the European Union Customs Union, at least under Boris's deal. We're in the UK Customs Union, albeit there are issues in relation to having to have checks coming from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Now, I listened very carefully to what the Prime Minister had to say in the House of Commons in response to one of my colleagues today, where he said emphatically, I think was the phrase he used, that there wouldn't be any checks. So we look forward to hearing from him how he's going to deal with that in the coming days.
Well, I mean, just on that, Stefan de Rink, a European Commission spokesman, has said tonight in London that he is absolutely certain there will have to be those checks in the Irish Sea. So why on earth do you believe the Prime Minister?
Well, it's not a case of believing the Prime Minister. He has said it on the record in the House of Commons. We will meet with Michael Gove and indeed with ministers from Scotland and Wales next week in the Joint Ministerial Council meeting in Cardiff around this very issue. And we'll be listening very carefully to what the government has to say to us as to how they are going to deal with unfettered access between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, but also, importantly, from Great Britain into Northern Ireland.
What do you feel about this? Actually, as I understand it, completely unprecedented situation where every national parliament, not the UK Parliament, but obviously the Scottish, Welsh, Northern Ireland Assemblies have all voted against Boris Johnson's deal, but it will be pushed through and it will have a profound impact on all of your nations.
Well, I think it's important to recognise that perhaps we're voting against it for different reasons. Even in the Northern Ireland Assembly, those of us who want to see Brexit happening are voting for different reasons from those who don't want to see Brexit happening. So it's important to recognise that. But from our perspective, we want to make sure that we leave the European Union. We joined it together, so we need to leave it together as one nation. And we have serious concerns, as you know, Robert, around the withdrawal agreement and what it means for inter-trade in between the different parts of the United Kingdom. And that's very important for us because, of course, most of our goods are sold into the Great Britain market. I think it's around 70% of all goods that are made in Northern Ireland circulate within the United Kingdom market. And then about 2/3 of our goods that we sell in Northern Ireland come over from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. So as you can see, we're completely integral and it would be absolutely wrong and would cause consumers, the prices would go up. We may have less consumer choice. So those are issues that are very critical to us in Northern Ireland and we need to get answers to them.
Now, your Legislative Assembly is up and running again, but I do just want to have one final question on this sort of general issue of DUP decision-making in the UK Parliament, and it is that as a result of your decision-making, you ended up with a general election where you lost a couple of MPs. You lost any influence over the Tory government because Boris Johnson got more or less a landslide. This was a disaster for the DUP. Have you had to consider your own position as leader of the DUP?
Well, it wasn't a disaster for the DUP, and in fact, if you look at the actual share of the vote, it was our second best result in the history of the DUP in relation to the number of votes that we received.
But you lost a couple of MPs.
We lost two very critical MPs, and we're very sorry that that has happened. But, you know, democracy is there. We have to respect democracy and we have to get on with it. And we have as much influence now as we did before the Confidence and Supply Agreement. In other words, we will have to work very hard with our colleagues and build alliances right across the House of Commons. And I was very pleased to have a good meeting with Tony Lloyd earlier this week, the Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland.
Now, on the Assembly being up and running again, you've got a few tricky issues. Perhaps the trickiest is the whole abortion issue, where Westminster voted to decriminalise abortion. One of your new MPs says that the new framework, however, for how the new approach to abortion should be implemented should be scrapped. Do you agree with that?
Well, I believe that the abortion legislation was imposed upon Northern Ireland going against the devolution settlement, actually. It should have been very much left to the Northern Ireland Assembly to deal with these issues. It was imposed upon us. So now what we need to do is that the Assembly is back and running. Therefore, we need to have our voice heard in relation to all of these issues because it will be a very different voice to what has been imposed upon us from Westminster.
So are you saying that you will try now and seize control of the whole issue of how abortion is operated in Northern Ireland?
Well, I think there's unanimity across the chamber in regard to the fact that currently we have a position where abortions are available up to 27 weeks, which is totally unacceptable right across the piece. There will be some argument about where that should come back to, but I think everybody in Northern Ireland recognises that that is not a sustainable position and we need to deal with that.
Now, there's also this very contentious issue of the position of army veterans. David Davis has been arguing that on the basis of the Stormont House Agreement, he worries there will be a disproportionate number of former British Army officers prosecuted. Do you share those fears?
Well, I think it's been 5 years since the Stormont House Agreement, and the government put out a consultation on this issue some time ago. They need to look at that consultation very closely, and I think when they look at that consultation, they will see that there's a great deal of concern about elements of the Stormont House Agreement, and I think it's incumbent upon the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to engage with all of those victims groups that have sent in concerns, and indeed we have raised concerns ourselves about the Stormont House Agreement. As I say, 5 years ago, a lot of things have changed, and we need to get back into a situation where we put the victims at the centre of anything we do in relation to legacy issues.
And finally, on same-sex marriage, do you recognise or do you accept that you've lost the argument?
Well, as you know, same-sex marriage has, again, like abortion, been imposed upon Northern Ireland. What we need to ensure now are the same, if you like, safeguards for those people who don't want to engage in those issues from a church point of view are given to Northern Ireland as have been given in the rest of the United Kingdom. The Secretary of State says that is the case, and we will very much hope that that is the case.
First Minister, wonderful that you joined us tonight. Thank you so much. So, can I just quickly ask you, on this issue of the border in the Irish Sea, how concerned are you about that?
I think Boris's deal is a vast improvement on the previous one. The current deal, now presented to Parliament, it protects and reinforces the union. It avoids a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and enables Northern Ireland to benefit from UK trade policy or the trade deals that the UK will be striking with the rest of the world.
Those checks on trade going back and forth, that must cause you anxiety.
Well, I think there's a bit of misunderstanding. There's a conflation here between checks of checks and declarations.
It's still bureaucracy.
There is bureaucracy already at all of these borders, and they may well continue away from the border. There are many, many methods which will reduce friction and enable Northern Ireland to play an integral part in the United Kingdom.
Lovely to speak to you tonight, Suella, and you, Lucy. Thanks for joining us. That's it on next week's show. We'll be just 48 hours from Brexit. Will it be a wake or a party? Tune in to find out. Bye.